A new era of technology means that we could potentially be staring down the barrel of what I can only describe as the next generation of MMOs. Today, I'm going to be talking about server meshing. More specifically, I'm going to talk about what Ashes of Creation's Intrepid net system is hoping to accomplish, as well as hype up, if you will, the fact that this technology may in fact bring the massive back into massive multiplayer online games. But before I get into what Ashes specifically is planning with their Intrepid net system, I want to get into server meshing and talk about some of the massive problems that this can end up solving. Let me go ahead and pose a scenario to you here where, say you've had a friend for years now begging you to jump into World of Warcraft. Finally, you break down and decide to get into the game and grind throughout the week so that come weekend time, you can jump into the game with your buddy and play together. You start up an account on server A, grinding all week long just to find out that your buddy's account is actually on server D, and you are now out of luck. I'm not perfectly in tune with the exact ins and outs as to how World of Warcraft works, so let me know if I'm wrong down in the comments. But from what I understand, the only method for you to swap a character between servers is to cop out $25. And I do want to point out that most games offer a server transfer service, which does technically solve the problem that I'm bringing up in this scenario, but in most cases, this costs money. And if we take this same exact scenario into an MMO that is utilizing server meshing, the main difference here would be that one server would be able to have a much larger player cap, meaning you most likely could get away with having one server per region of the world. And at that point, the extra servers would only have to pop up in order to facilitate giving people better connections, meaning that I don't think that server meshing solves the problem of ping. So NA would still have to have separate servers from EU. Regardless, though, the player count and server count is only one of the problems that server meshing solves. It could definitely lead to some major advances in not only security for these games, but also connectivity for the players. Case in point being Ashes of Creation, who are working on a server meshing tech that they are calling Intrepid Net. If you are interested in the in-depth talk that Ashes did about what they are doing with this tech, you have got to go watch the presentation that they put together. I will link that down in the description. But to try and simplify a major aspect of this as much as I can, Intrepid Net essentially makes each server a part of a dynamic grid, with each part of this grid being an individual mini server, if you will, which allows them to really split the workload here, giving the capability of not only a massive MMO without layering, but Ashes of Creation is also shooting for record-breaking player counts and literally next generation technological advances here that would not only change MMOs, but games in general. The same can be said with Star Citizen and their server meshing technology. Ashes of Creation goes about it in a little bit of a different way. Again, you have got to go check out their in-depth discussion on this to fully wrap your head around the possibilities here. Because I by no means am a computer engineer, so even simplifying this grid scenario that they have put together here, I'm sure I'm understating the power that this actually gives Intrepid. But let's say, for example, you are on grid section A, then that grid section is the only one that your game is focusing on processing-wise. If your friend is on grid section B, which is right next to grid section A, and you can see him from your grid section, essentially what you will be seeing is a proxy of him rather than the actual character, which is just one of a dozen ways that Ashes is going to go about optimizing the game and the server technology in a way that is allowing for a player cap that previously would be impossible. Because before this, they would have to run checks on both your friend in the grid section B and everything in grid section B, as well as grid section A and everything in grid section A and every other grid section in the game. Whereas in now they are able to much more directly focus the processing power while still maintaining control of the overall game, because they have built out this Intrepid net system in a way that interacting with, fighting with, seeing accurate representations of is all still happening, even though technically you are in separate servers. Like I said, though, go watch them talk about this because it is insane. I'm not really here today to talk about how possible this even really is. Rather, it is more so the idea that server meshing is being worked on in such a way that really piques my interest. And honestly, I've got to say that if you're the person who's sitting there right now saying, never will a technology like that be possible, my simple response to you would be, okay, boomer. Because as a matter of fact, I remember a story that my dad told me where he was making fun of his friend. Mind you, this was in a time where people had phones that looked like giant purses, and they would tote these giant purses around to make phone calls. And rather than making fun of him for that, he instead ragged on him for claiming that phones would one day be small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, and we see how that one turned out. So basically what I'm saying is that technology will get there, and Ashes of Creation might have already gotten there with this Intrepid net server system. At the bare minimum, it looks like they have taken one massive leap forward for the MMO genre, and I personally cannot wait to see how this ends up turning out. Let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comments. If you made it this far in the video, comment "made it" down below for an extra shout out. Other than that, though, hope you guys all have an amazing day. I'm out.